Hey folks, welcome. Here we discuss real stories by real people. Today we have the story of a man whose ex-wife won't stop trying to talk to him after their divorce due to her infidelity. Let's see how it goes. Story 1. It's been over 6 months since D-Day, 5 months since divorce, and I still need some advice. I do not have enough time to tell my full story, but here's what I can tell you. Married 5 years, had a great sex life. We had made the choice to not have kids until we were both 35. 2. I pretty much caught her 33 having sex with her AP in our bedroom. 3. I had been pretty clear about my views on infidelity right from when we started dating, and had told her very clearly that cheating was a complete no-no for me. 4. I stayed calm throughout the entire ordeal. I asked her to get dressed, I called up her elder sister who lived in a nearby town, and asked her to pick my wife up. 5. I blocked her on all platforms and talked to my lawyer about the divorce proceedings. 6. They drove back to my house the next day, and she immediately threw herself onto me and started crying profusely. She wanted me to give her a chance to explain herself. 7. Even though I didn't really want to hear any of it, and my answer would still be divorce whether she cheated 100 times or just once, I sat down with her and asked her some questions. 8. My first question was it an emotional affair or a physical one? She seemed to be stupefied for a good 5 or 6 seconds before tears started streaming down her face, and she whined about how I could even think she would have an emotional affair with someone else other than me, and swore it was a purely physical one. 9. My second question was, were you unsatisfied in our marriage in any way? She claimed she wasn't. She was incredibly happy with both our sex life and our financial status. 10. What was the reason then? I don't know, she said, and absolutely broke down. She got on her knees and said she felt disgusted with herself. She said she was going through a lot since she wasn't doing well in her job, and she wanted to validate her own importance in her mind. She often talked to me about her job too. I supported her wholeheartedly, and she was also going to therapy for it. Even though I did not understand her reason, I did not poke much into it. 11. How many times were you physically involved? She told me it was only 3 times of physical contact, and she had apparently never allowed him to kiss her. I don't know if that was supposed to make me feel better about it. 12. With that, I was done. I told her that I wanted a divorce. Surprisingly, she did not say anything, just nodded and went to the guest room and locked herself up with her sister. 13. Unfortunately though, before I could serve her the divorce papers, our district went into lockdown and travel between districts was prohibited. Thus, in an unfortunate turn of events, it seemed I would need to spend a full week with my wife in the same house, and I could not even file for divorce because the courts were closed. 14. But I was not having that bullshit. I decided to move out and live in my neighbor's house instead, and that helped somewhat. I would still see her every day. Dark circles, swollen eyes, she looked nothing like before. 15. One day, she got too drunk and I heard her shouting in her room, "I disgust you, don't I? You can't even look at my face." And she repeated that the whole night. 16. Another day, I bumped into her talking to someone on the phone in the footpath in front of our house, and she immediately started freaking out and screamed, "I was not talking to him, I promise. It was just my colleague from work." A while later, she seemed to realize her mistake and walked away without another word. 17. A week later, they moved away, and I moved back into my house. I got done with the divorce about a month later. Bizarrely, she did not demand anything from me in the settlement. 18. 6 months later, she would still text me and call me sometimes. She once drove over 50 miles to see me when I was ill with COVID. I have not been doing very well. I do still love her. The way she was truly mournful of her mistakes sometimes almost made me feel for her again. But other times, I just want to cut her off completely and start afresh. I'm not sure if I would be able to love or marry again. But I did get along with a few hookups in the last 2 weeks or so, and to be honest, it does feel somewhat better. I don't know if I can move on if we keep talking. I've told her not to talk to me, but she doesn't listen. Should I just block her everywhere? I really do not want to hurt her, but she has not left me any option. What should I do? Update. So I did exactly what I had intended to do. I called her up and told her that I wished to go completely no contact for a few months. For a few seconds, I heard nothing on her end, long enough for me to ask her if she even heard me. She said she did hear me and started fumbling for words once again. I explained to her that it was not any fault of hers. It was just me that was finding it difficult to move on with my life if we kept talking. She said she understood and promised not to contact me. Before hanging up, she asked me if I was planning on completely cutting her off. I bluntly told her that I was not planning to do so at the moment, but I might change my decision in the future. She told me it was all right, that I deserved to do whatever I needed to get over it, and she told me that she would try to find a new job during these months. With that, I bid her farewell and proceeded to block her on all platforms. A few hours later, her sister called me up. She told me I had made a good decision, especially since my ex-wife needed this NC period too. She only did a part-time job, hardly ever went out, and spent the entire day going through old pictures. Thus, at least for the moment, I feel like I've made a good decision. A lot of people have messaged me asking me several questions that were left untouched in the original post. Here, I would like to clear out some. 1. How long has the affair been going on? According to her, they first had sex when she went on a work-related trip to another city, which was about 1 month before D-Day. Now she claims there was no sexual tension between them before this trip. But on the other hand, they have been working together in the same office for about 3 months, so I really can't tell if she's lying. 2. How did she behave in the days before D-Day and immediately after it? In the few weeks before D-Day when her affair was ongoing, I didn't really notice anything out of the ordinary. I'm generally a very perceptive individual. The usual signs of an affair, such as increased conflict, anger, blaming, trying to keep one's phone close by at all times. I did not notice any of it with her. In fact, she only grew quieter every day. I figured it was because of the problem she was facing at work and had a good talk with her. She hugged my chest and cried for several minutes, and I did my best in comforting her. We also had a lot of sex that week, as we usually did every day. I feel kind of embarrassed saying this, but we did a roleplay of her as a criminal and me as a policeman who caught her and then had forceful sex with her. It was her idea. In hindsight, it does make some kind of sense now, though it kinda F's me up. Apart from that, I noticed nothing out of the ordinary. On the day of discovery, she was dazed throughout the ordeal. It seemed her brain was switched off. She just looked at me with wide eyes, tears streaming down, and just nodded when I told her to wait for her elder sister while I left back to work. Later, my sister-in-law called me up to tell me that my ex-wife was nowhere to be found. I was preparing to go out in search of her when she called again to tell me that she found ex-wife walking around in a dazed state around our neighborhood. She was either searching for me or for her AP. I don't know which. In her sister's house, she apparently also tried to harm herself physically, but then calmed down and had some rest. 3. Is she still talking to her AP? This is one point that I failed to mention in my original post. She quit her job immediately after D-Day. According to her, she could not bear to see AP there every day. I had anticipated that she would use this opportunity to ask for a heavy stipulation from the divorce, which made it even more bizarre that she didn't. Was she really talking to her AP on the phone when you stumbled upon her on the footpath? Frankly, I don't know, and I haven't asked. 5. How was your relationship after the divorce? We did have an NC period of about 1 week after the divorce. Later, she called me up and asked me if I could consider keeping a friendly relationship with her. I saw no harm in it, so I agreed. We agreed that we would not talk about the divorce or our married life. We just asked each other about work and about how we were doing. As for the frequency of contact, I would say minimal, 1 or 2 texts per day maybe, and sometimes none for days. Sometimes we would talk over call, but not for long periods. We never met physically. She did once drive over when I was ill, but was not allowed to actually meet me physically because I was in the isolation ward. 6. Have you tried therapy? Of course. I've been in therapy since D-Day. His ex-wife went to a therapist for the first 2 months after the divorce, but then stopped going for no apparent reason. Some people in the comment section seemed to misunderstand my original post. They kept posting comments asking me to consider reconciliation. I would like to reiterate that my original post was about whether I should block her or not, and not about reconciliation. I made the decision to not reconcile a long time ago, and my ex-wife has accepted it. It's not about how much she regrets and mourns over it. I'm simply incapable of trusting her again. Once again, a very sincere thanks to everyone who commented. OP, it's difficult for any betrayed spouse, man or woman, to cut off ties with their cheating partners, even though they may still love them. For you to go NC for the time being must have been the most difficult decision for you. But as a result, we'll let you move forward in life. Go full no contact. You owe your ex-wife absolutely nothing, nor do you need to offer any form of friendship. You owe yourself everything. Love yourself and move on with a positive attitude. Now for some comments. It would be wise to leave no contact in place permanently. You have no children together, there's no reason to remain in contact. If your wife had accepted your decision not to reconcile, then she would not have any interest in remaining in contact save to try to use you further. Why do people in happy marriages need validation from the outside? What's wrong with getting it from your spouse? I don't get it. She was happy and knew that cheating was an absolute marriage ender and still cheated. Unbelievable. Good on her mother for slapping the shit out of her. As mentioned already, NC should be indefinitely, as she's most likely trying to use friendly contact to slowly work her way back into a relationship with you. She probably only agreed to whatever you wanted because she realized it would be the best move to try to win back your trust. I would personally move on with my life from her and never look back. Story 2. My 23 male wife, 22, and I got married in March. We've been having a wonderful time together, even bought a new house together and have been living here since. I've always been very committed and have never cheated on anyone. You can understand my shock at what happened 3 weeks ago. She was playing a song on her phone, and I just went to look at the name of the song. There was a Snapchat from some guy. "Who is this guy?" I asked. "You don't want to look at that," she replied. My heart started racing. I instantly went through everything. Messages, social media, and photos. There were pictures of them together in our house while I was working. I couldn't believe it. Turns out it had been going on for about a month. She slept on the couch that night and heard her crying loudly. She slept there for 2 nights. We agreed that I could check her phone. She came back at the end of the day and let me see it. I found a message she had accidentally screenshot of her message telling him she was crying over him. I was once again furious. For the next week, she stayed on the couch. We decided to go get some food together, and it was actually a nice time. That next morning was another stab. I called her to tell her to have a good day. She had an AirPod in her pocket, and for whatever reason it answered. I heard her talking to him, telling him how much she missed him and all the tears she cried for him. She called me back, and she came back into the house. I made her leave that night to go to her parents. She has since quit her job. They were co-workers, and we've started counseling. She said she's sorry, but I'm just so depressed. I wake up angry and sad every day and can't stop picturing them in my home. I don't know if I should even think about reconciling, but here for advice. Thanks. OP, don't reconcile. You're now the other man in her eyes. She's too infatuated with the other guy to even be a decent candidate for reconciliation, especially with how she's acted since discovery. Annul your marriage, expose her affair to protect yourself, and move on. I know it will be jarring to go from married back to being single with such a short turnaround, but doing that will eventually let you move on. Get counseling for yourself and lean on friends and family to get through this. Now for some comments. She's been your wife for 6 months and is already cheating? Save your money for the counselor and use it for an annulment. If she can't be loyal in the first year of a marriage, she's never going to be loyal. This wasn't even a drunken hookup. This was an ongoing thing that you caught her in the middle of. Exactly. Annulment required ASAP before your chance vanishes. So 5 months into your marriage, she starts her affair. After a month, you catch her. She then messages him saying how sad she is. You have one nice day, and then the next day she rings him saying how sad she is. You have no idea how lucky you are to have caught this. Chances are she was having affairs before you were married as well. If you don't get out now, her body count will skyrocket because she knows you are too invested in her to do anything. She brought another man to your bed that you paid for. They made passionate love repeatedly. Every time she cries, it will be for him. Every time she daydreams about sex, it'll be with him. How many times did you have to catch her in a lie before she knew she had to do something serious to not lose the fool who is willing to commit and provide her with safety? If the AP told her to divorce you and come live with him, do you think she would be asking for reconciliation right now? You go to counseling and reconciliation works and things get back to normal. Then a year later he texts her and says, "I miss you." What's gonna happen?